Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Megan Glova. We learned on Sunday morning that NC State fired men's basketball coach Kevin Keatts. I spoke to WRAL sports reporter and anchor Luis Fernandez soon after to find out why, what's next, and break down a social media response from Keatts. Take a listen. What happened here? Obviously not a great season for Kevin Keatts, but they did, make it to the Final Four last year.
That's the tricky part of all this, right? I think the Final Four has to be taken a bit in a vacuum. It was this amazing run. You're seeing here on your screen the way they ran through the ACC tournament to get to the Final Four itself. Very impressive. However, outside of that Final Four run, the Wolfpack were struggling a little bit. The Final Four run was just the third time under head coach Kevin Keatts that they got to the NCAA tournament, and he was on the hot seat prior to this run in the ACC tournament and to the Final Four. When you take all of that and combine it with just how poorly they did this season, it ultimately resulted in him being fired.
So what did the Final Four do to his contract, and how did that impact this decision?
So it added things to his contract.
Right.
Obviously, there are bonuses, there are things like that are applied. It also added $500,000 in a raise to his supplemental compensation.
Okay.
So essentially a $500,000 raise for each year. In addition to that, there was part of his contract that for ACC tournament titles, for example, and for Final Four appearances, his contract was extended. So you saw Kevin Keatts' contract be extended. Now, that was not an intentional decision to extend his contract after the Final Four. It was something that was baked in to his contract. So 2 years were added to the length of his contract. Ultimately, how all that kind of comes together is in the situation of his buyout. He is owed money for being let go without cause prior to the end of his contract.
Gotcha.
So the number, I believe, is about $6.75 million is how much Kevin Keatts is owed.
Wow. And, let's go over his statement. I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. It begins pretty standard that he's proud of what he and the team accomplished, especially that Final Four appearance. But then he makes mention of an NCAA investigation due to actions of the prior staff. What was he referencing there, and why include it?
So it's part of it is because that NCAA investigation and the results from it impacted his program while he was there. Back from 2014 to 2017, it was found that NC State, under former head coach Mark Gottfried, violated different recruiting policies. And so because of that, there were scholarship losses. There were some recruiting limitations. They faced a year of probation. Ultimately, they weren't banned from the postseason for a year or anything like that. But all of those things together, plus the cloud that would hang over a program when there's an investigation and you don't know what is going to come from it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's something that would impact the program. So him mentioning that in his statement, I think has a lot to do with, hey, look, this is what we had to go through in the first couple years that I was the head coach. So it plays into perhaps some of the struggles. It is context, I think, is probably the best way to put it.
Okay. And then he goes on to say there that he thinks he's leaving the program in a better position to succeed than when he started. Do you agree with that? Does that make sense in the big picture?
I think when you look at the investigation, yes. When Kevin Keatts came in, obviously they had that investigation going on, and that puts them in a difficult position. Having a Final Four run like they did, it was a moment that NC State fans are going to remember for the rest of their lives, right? The first Final Four trip since 1983, the first ACC tournament title since 1987. It put NC State on the national stage. It helped to guide this program through the beginning of the NIL period, the expansion of the transfer portal and things like that. So I think it's fair to say that the program is in a better place. However, part of why this happens is you have to look at what the future of that program looks like. Really cannot emphasize enough, this year was a big disappointment for NC State, and Kevin Keatts himself has said that. It's going from winning the tournament to not appearing in the tournament the next year.
Yeah.
They tied a program record for a 9-game losing streak in the middle of this one. So the state of the program, I would agree with what Kevin Keatts said in his statement. It is in a much better position now than it was when he got there. But part of the reason why a decision like this is made is to look ahead at what the program is, what the expectations are, what the standards are, and it appears, at least according to Boo Corrigan, that Kevin Keatts was not living up to those standards.
And do you think that if they won this most recent game, would that have changed anything?
I don't know. I don't think it would have, because while that is a tough way to end the season, it's not like that one game made it or broke it.
Sure.
If they would have made the ACC tournament, maybe, perhaps, but once again, you're looking at the difference between being the 15th best team in the conference and like the 17th or 16th best team in the conference, where they ended up finishing.
He ends the statement with a bit of humor here, saying that he is officially entering the portal. What was your reaction to that?
Kevin Keatts is a funny guy, honestly. Kevin Keatts is, during my experiences interacting with him, Kevin Keatts is not a robot. He's a human.
Right.
He is a person, and so he was always not afraid to show that humor, show that personality. I kind of think it's a funny way to end the topic there. Kevin Keatts, this NC State was his second stop. He was previously the head coach at UNC Wilmington, and then here at NC State in Raleigh. So I'm curious to see what comes next for Kevin Keatts. He's got a lot of history as an assistant coach. And there were successes with the Wolfpack for sure. He did well in the transfer portal for the most part, bringing in some big time players like the DJs that we saw last year, Jarkel Joyner, these different players. So they are. It's funny to see Kevin Keatts have a situation like that. And, he's a good person, and you're hoping in the best, but it appears his time at Raleigh has come to an end.
All right. And with that being said, is it too soon to predict who the next head coach will be?
Yes and no. It's never too soon.
Sure.
It's never too soon. It's college athletics. We love predicting. Not necessarily for the NC State job, but if you look at kind of the list of coaches that are on the short list of, hey, these are coaches who have done well at smaller programs and may have an opportunity to go to a larger program like a Power 4 school like NC State, for example. You got Ryan Odom with VCU, Will Wade with McNeese State. Will Wade was also the former head coach at LSU and has some NCAA issues that he's gone through himself. Richard Pitino, son of legendary coach Rick Pitino. He's at New Mexico. Ben McCollum at Drake, for example. None of these necessarily tied specifically to the NC State job, but when you're looking at up-and-coming coaches, should NC State go that way, these are the names that will be on the national radar throughout the course of the offseason.
All right. Any final thoughts about Keatts or just this whole situation today?
Well, it's the timing is very important for NC State, right? They did not make the ACC tournament. They will not be playing next week in Charlotte. With the current setup as well, the transfer portal is something to take in effect. The transfer portal is going to be opening up here in just a little bit, I believe during the first week of the NCAA tournament. So all of these kind of go into the timeline of decision making, and NC State will have something to do here. Kevin Keatts was the head coach since the 2017-2018 season. So 8 years with NC State, and obviously incredible highs, some not so great lows.
Sure.
So we'll see what the Wolfpack end up doing here moving forward.
We have much more on this story up now on WRALSportsFan.com. And you can find more podcasts from WRAL News at WRAL.com. Search podcast. From breaking sports news like this to true crime, there are plenty of shows to keep you informed and entertained. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.